AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
Before we jump into today's episode, let's hear from today's sponsor. Honest stories of pregnancy, parenthood, and loss are too often left unshared. We are here to tell the real stories. Join mom, actress, and advocate Tatiana Ali to hear real stories about the joys and humor of parenting to the heartbreak and loneliness of miscarriage and loss in a new podcast from the March of Dimes. Each episode features a parent's honest story about the realities of starting a family. It only takes hearing one story like your own to know you are not alone. To join the conversation, go to unspokenstories.org and marchofdimes.org. Let's get on to today's show. You're listening to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based grief and loss podcast for Black women, where you will hear stories of miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, and infertility to learn there is a testimony in tragedy. You will learn how to heal, gain clarity, find hope and peace, and turn your pain into your purpose after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee.
Well, thank you so much, Tomeka, for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So I'd like to begin with you sharing a little bit about yourself and what you do.
I am from North Carolina, born and raised. Right now I live in South Carolina, Fort Mill, which is like right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. I am in compliance. I work for Citibank in compliance for anti-money laundering. I've been in compliance for about 14 years. I am happily married to my husband, Brandon. I was a theater major undergrad, which is always funny because I'm nowhere near that right now. But I'm just me. I'm silly. I crack jokes all the time. I love music and shopping, especially shoes and handbags and blazers. And, I'm just trying to make it right now. Just trying to make it.
Yes, I understand. And I love you on the shoes. And our husbands have the same name. So I can't forget your husband's name. Yes. So take us back on your journey to motherhood and share with us your loss story.
Okay. So we got married in 2015. And I've always been the type of person who's like, I don't want to get married and then immediately have kids. But I didn't get married until I was 38. And you know how people are always like, oh, well, you need to go ahead and have kids because you're not getting any younger and you're losing all your eggs, blah, 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 all that stuff. So at first, when we first got married, I didn't want to rush into having kids. I've never been that person to where I had to have kids for my life to be complete. I was, not that little girl that was like, oh, I got to have kids. And then, I wasn't that person. But, as I got older, I definitely wanted kids. But I also didn't want to have kids and not be married. So my husband and I, we got married. I was 38. He's 2 years younger than me. So he was 36. And, for the first year, we were just like enjoying being married. And, I'm coming up on my 40th birthday. So I'm like, I don't want to. So I had started a new job and stuff. So I was like, well, let's just go ahead and start trying. So we did, and we tried for about a year, and nothing happened. And then I went to my doctor, my OB, and he was like, well, let's just, run some tests and stuff. And it came back that I had limited supply of eggs. So he wanted me to talk to an endocrinologist. So I went, and we went to the initial meeting. They did the initial test. And for me, it didn't feel right. And, not to knock anybody else for doing it, but at the time for me, this wasn't into all of the things that go along with, IVF treatments and IUI treatments and stuff like that. So we kind of just left it alone and just kind of just said we were going to try, just a little while longer on our own. So in about October of 2017, we found out we were pregnant. And I was like, you know how you are when you first find out, you're like running around like, oh God, what am I going to do? Because I waited until he left to go to work to take the test because, you know, if it was negative, I didn't really want to disappoint him. So I took the test and it was positive. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? Like, how am I going to tell him? What am I going to do? So I ended up going to like Target, buying this like black onesie, and I got a card. And you know how you pull up everything about your due date and everything. I wrote all that information in a card, and I like ironed on letters that said Isaac, baby Isaac. So when he got home, I put all that in the bag with the pregnancy test and gave it to him. And he's like looking at me like, are you serious? Are you serious? Are you? And I'm like, yeah, like I joke, but I wouldn't joke about something like that. So, you know, he's screaming and hollering and stuff. I should have recorded it, but I didn't. So that's how we found out. And I went to my OB, and I had gone to my OB for probably 5 years prior to that. So it was like a normal transition. I just went, and I used to go for my annual. So I just went and said, hey, oh, by the way, I'm pregnant. And they did, you know, the urine test for verification and, you know, confirmed that I was pregnant. And then we, you know, did an ultrasound, and he told me I was high risk because I was 40 when I first got pregnant, and he put me on a low dose of aspirin. And I mean, that was it. You know, I had no morning sickness. My pregnancy was great. You know, Jace was growing. He was kicking me. And it was, you know, it was pretty much perfect. I know there's nothing perfect, but it was a perfect pregnancy. Like I said, I wasn't sick, no morning sickness, no nothing, like no indigestion, no heartburn. I barely had cravings. Like I couldn't have had a better pregnancy. I didn't even gain a lot of weight. Like I was still wearing like my regular clothes. I would just unbutton the top of my pants. But, you know, as I got farther along, I ended up, you know, getting some maternity clothes and wearing those. But again, perfect pregnancy. So May 13th, which last year was Mother's Day, we had gone to my husband's mom's house for Mother's Day, and, you know, came back, and I had gone to bed and my stomach started hurting, and it felt like I had to poop, basically. So I went and tried to use the bathroom and stuff, and I couldn't. So eventually I ended up throwing up. So me, I'm like, oh, I got real funny because again, I hadn't had morning sickness during my pregnancy at all. So I'm like, haha, God, that's really funny. And, you know, I threw up, and then I ended up just going back to bed and falling asleep. So that Monday I woke up and I was sore. So it's kind of like you're when you're sore from throwing up. So I just assumed I was sore from throwing up. And in my head, I was like, well, maybe I just ate something bad at his mom's house and it just wasn't agreeing with my stomach. So I sent a text message to my manager at work, and I was just like, I'm not feeling well. I think I may have like some kind of food situation, poisoning situation going on. And she was like, you know, okay. So I kind of laid in the bed all day that day, and my husband was a little worried. So he called my best friend, and my best friend ended up coming to our house. She worked from home, so she sat with me, and I had to use a bathroom, and I was still like sore, so I couldn't really get up. So I called her and I asked her to come, and it wasn't like an excruciating pain. It was just like I just felt sore. So it wasn't throbbing or anything like that. So she came, she tried to help me go to the bathroom. And when she picked me up, I passed out. And I'm like, and I woke up and I could hear her on the phone with like 911. So I'm like really out of it at this point. And then I don't even know how long it took them to get there, but they ended up coming. I was upstairs, so they're trying to get me downstairs, and they put me in this like chair, and they call it a stair chair. And they took me downstairs in this chair. And honestly, it probably would have been better if somebody just threw me over their shoulder and took me down, because that thing was like so uncomfortable. It was so awkward. And my best friend's like, yeah, you look like Hannibal Lecter sitting in that chair. It's like really weird. So they rushed me to the hospital, and again, I'm kind of in and out of it. So we get to the hospital, and eventually, like all of my family that's local, they show up, and we're just sitting in there, we're waiting. And they had, you know, hooked me up to an IV at this point, and were giving me fluids and and hooked me up to a catheter and all that stuff, and started doing ultrasound. So it got really awkward in the room. And I can remember I was on the phone with my mom, and I remember telling her, I'm like, you know, something's not right. Like, they don't know what they're doing. They're acting really weird. But it was just kind of like, it was just a lull in the room. It was really weird. It was like really quiet and people were just kind of standing around and it was just awkward. So I guess they were kind of like waiting on someone or whoever it was that was supposed to tell us what had happened. And my husband, of course, had gotten there by that time. And one of the nurses, I don't even know if it was a nurse or a doctor, but she walked in and she was like, we couldn't find the fetal heartbeat. And I just, I remember looking at my husband. I've never seen anybody's heartbreak in their face, but I could see his heartbreak in his face. And I was feeling exactly the same way that he was feeling. And then they proceeded to tell me that I had H.E.L.P syndrome. And I'm looking, one of my friends used to be, well, she's a nurse, but she used to work in labor and delivery. And, you know, she's looking and we're all like, what is, she knew, but we were all like, what is H.E.L.P syndrome? Because I've never heard of it before in my life. I heard of pre-eclampsia, never H.E.L.P. So they're like, but we need to induce you. And I just remember saying, can you give me a C-section? Because I felt like how cruel it was to have me go through labor and my son not be alive. I just felt like that was just cruel. And she was like, no, we have to induce you. But we have to transfer you to another hospital because we don't have anybody to monitor your heart. Because at this point, my heart rate was like 150, like it was fluctuating between like 130 and 150. And they were really concerned. And so the hospital I was rushed to wasn't my OB hospital. It wasn't where I was supposed to have my son. And I asked them if they could just transfer me to that hospital, but that hospital also didn't have anyone that could monitor my heart. It sounds really strange, and I'm not really sure what the situation was, but they ended up transferring me to a bigger hospital in Charlotte. What they didn't know at the time was that I was bleeding internally, and they didn't find out until after I had left the ER and was in transport to the other hospital. I'm clueless. I have absolutely no idea what's going on. I just know I'm going to another hospital to get induced. There was a doctor at the larger hospital who realized that I was bleeding internally because the other hospital hadn't realized it. And she called back. So my husband's in the ambulance and they now have to turn on lights because I now have to go into emergency surgery. So I get to the hospital and it's literally like an episode of ER. It's like ER, House, all those medical shows combined because there were like 20 doctors in the room, in the emergency room when I got there. But the doctor who had found the blood in my stomach had called like 4 teams of doctors to try to figure out how to save my life. Again, I have absolutely no idea what's going on. So when I get in there, they're like, okay, we're going to do a C-section. And I remember being really confused as to what, like, they just told me they were going to induce me. And then I was out. Like, they sedated me and I was out. I was out for 2 days. So that was Monday. I was pretty much I was sedated for Monday, Tuesday, and I came out of it on Wednesday. And I came out of it to find that I had literally almost died. I should not have been alive at my house because of all the blood that was in my stomach. When I woke up, my abdomen was open because they had packed my abdomen with sponges to try to stop the blood because I had a hematoma on my liver the size of a softball and they couldn't stop the bleeding. So they just packed me. They had packed me I had at least 3 surgeries that night, including the C-section to take Jace. So I was out for 2 days and I woke up confused. I was intubated. I had on mitts. I was like hooked up to all these wires and I had absolutely no idea what was going on. And I wasn't supposed to wake up according to the doctors until Thursday. They didn't think that I was going to wake up until Thursday. Unbeknownst to me, Jace had been in my room the whole time and they were just trying to figure out what was going to happen with me because they weren't really expecting me to make it at all. So they had him in my room. And when I woke up and kind of like figured out a little bit what was going on, even though I couldn't talk, my mom asked me if I wanted to hold him. So they took the mitts off my hand so I could hold them, but I couldn't see because I wear contacts that are medically necessary. And I didn't have my glasses because my best friend had my glasses and she wasn't there. So the first time and the last time I held my son, I could barely see him. And like that's the part about everything that just like, it was just a stolen moment because none of it had to happen. And I cannot get that moment back. I couldn't, tell him I loved him. I couldn't say goodbye. I couldn't really do anything because I was still kind of out of it. And again, intubated and trying to figure out what all had happened. So I was in ICU for about, let's say 10 days. And then they transferred me to labor and delivery floor. My heart rate was still really crazy. And I eventually ended up getting released from the hospital. I had 7 surgeries, 6 at that point, and I was released. I ended up having to be readmitted a week later because I ended up getting an infection in my liver. They had to cut off parts of my liver in order to get rid of the abscess that was on my liver. So that was surgery number 7. I ended up staying in a hospital for an additional 28 days, which made it a total of 45. I entered the hospital on May 14th, left for good on July 5th, and been trying to get my life together. Jace was buried next to my father, but because I was readmitted to the hospital the day before his funeral, my husband and I weren't able to attend. They made videos for us, which neither one of us has been able to watch at this point. But one day, I think I'm telling myself that I'll eventually get up the nerve to watch it and not lose my mind. But yeah, that's the story of my loss for the most part. That's where we are now. I was out of work for about 5 months. I went back in October. And since then, I've realized the whole maternal mortality crisis that's facing our country. And I came to the realization that my OBGYN had not done any type of urine samples on me since my second appointment, which could have detected H.E.L.P syndrome. Jace had measured small on May 4th, and he had failed a stress test on May 10th. And the only thing they did was an ultrasound and never tested my blood or my urine, even though there were signs of, I guess, him being in distress. And 4 days later, he was gone and I was dying.
Wow. Man, your story takes me back to my story with my son being intubated, almost dying, and then waking up and realizing, oh my God, like what actually happened?
Yep.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It definitely takes me back to those times.
Today's podcast episode is sponsored by the March of Dimes. There is no perfect pregnancy, birth, or parent, and yet we rarely hear the real stories. It's time we speak up. Mom, actress, and advocate Tatiana Ali hosts Unspoken Stories, a new podcast from March of Dimes featuring real stories from the joys of parenthood to what happens when things don't go according to plan. You can listen to Unspoken Stories for free wherever you get your podcasts or by visiting unspokenstories.org. We see a lot of perfect images of pregnancy, birth, and parenting, but more and more people are standing up to tell their real stories. In this podcast, you will hear some of those real stories from the joy of parenting and the complexities of dealing with illness with actress and mom Jamie Lynn Sigler, a mom coping with loss and raising 2 toddlers, to the realities of parenting a baby born prematurely. These brave moms and dads have the courage to speak up and share their laughter, tears, and triumphs so that no one has to feel alone in their experiences. Sisters in Loss, I hope that you will join this important conversation, whether you're a parent or you're considering becoming one. Subscribe to Unspoken Stories for free wherever you get your podcasts and learn more by visiting unspokenstories.org. That's unspokenstories.org.
So really tell us about how your recovery was, your recovery physically, and then your recovery spiritually, as you started to, get back to what your new normal was without your baby, having this news that this could have been prevented. And then how did you go back during your 6-week checkup? Like, how was conversation like?
I think my faith at this point was strong enough for me to be okay, right? Like, I never doubted my faith in God. I always, I never was like, why did this happen to me? I knew it had to happen for a reason. As crazy as that sound, I was never angry. You know what I mean? Like, even in the pits of it, I was never angry. There were moments being in the hospital where I called him on his word, because for when I was in 28 days, 20 days, I had a fever every single day and they couldn't figure out why. So I had to call him on his word. And I remember being just laying in the bed one night, and my mom is amazing and was there with me every day. Her and my husband were just that's how I knew what day it was. My mom stayed during the week. My husband came in on the weekends. I just remember laying there and I said, God, you told me you were a healer, so you need to fix this. And that was the one moment where I was just like, I'm at my edge. I'm at my breaking point. I need for you to fix this. But I knew that he didn't bring me through this for nothing. There had to be something that I was supposed to learn from it. So that's when I was released, I was on my way to Nashville to see my cousin. And something told me, and I'm going to call it the Holy Spirit, told me to check my records. Because this is my first pregnancy. I don't know the routine. I've gone to my OB for like I said, 5 years prior to even being pregnant. So it's not like they didn't know me. It's not like I didn't know him. So I didn't have a reason not to trust the process, even though I didn't know what their process specifically was. So I never went back to them. My follow-up OB appointment was with one of my surgeons at the hospital. I've never heard from them. I've never reached out to them. I've not gone back to that OB since then. Another big part of my healing process was my support system. When I tell you, who loves you when you go through things, I found out then who loved me, because they were so there. They were so there that people were like, who is she and why is she so important, and why are all these people here in the ICU? Because the only 3 people could go back at a time. But my whole entire family was in the waiting room, and they were there every single day. And I don't think I would have made it without them, because they were never like, oh, well, how people ask you stupid questions when something happens. They're like, oh, well, are you going to try again? Or how are you feeling? They didn't say stupid stuff. They were just there. They were just there. And if I needed to cry, they were there. They didn't ask me crazy things or try to push anything on me. They were just there. And I think just that alone was an integral part of my healing process. And apparently, according to my friends, I'm very resilient. It's what they say. And I'm like, But I knew, and I told one of my friends, I was like, this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me, but this isn't the worst thing that's ever happened. So my son died so I could live. And that's a lot to live up to. And I think a part of me was just trying to figure out how to live up to be his mom, because he had sacrificed so much for me. And when I realized that it could have been prevented, and it happens all the time, I found my passion, because I couldn't I won't let other people go through it. And, a lot of people were like, oh, it has something to do with socioeconomic status and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, no, not in this case. So my focus is, I'm in a position to where I know better. And there are a lot of people in the position where they may not know better or can't afford to know better or just can't afford to get better. And I can't let that happen to other people. You know, like you said, it was your passion. It's just kind of like I feel obligated to do something because it doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm in compliance. So, you know, looking back on my medical records, I'm like, I work for a bank. Banks are regulated out the wazoo. Understand that? How is it that a medical practice can have, and I've, you know, researched their practice online and they have a schedule of, you know, tests they take during a regular pregnancy. And it says like every single appointment after 17 weeks, you get a urine sample, every single one. And they didn't do that for me. They took 2 urine samples my whole pregnancy. One was the verification of my pregnancy, the confirmation. And the other one, I don't even know why they took that one. But yeah, that's it, you know? And I know working at a bank, if we don't follow our processes and procedures, we get fined. Like if a regulator goes in and checks that, we get fined. So I'm also faced with why are banks more regulated than healthcare? That doesn't make any sense. There needs to be there's no.
It doesn't make sense at all. You're right.
Yeah, the worst case scenario at a bank is 9/11. That's the worst possible case. You know, that's the worst case scenario. Healthcare, you're killing people every day. Like people die every day or could die every day. How is that? How is that? How does that make sense to anybody? And if you know that there's, you know, racial disparities in healthcare, what controls do you guys have in place to combat the disparities? Like, what are you doing? I shouldn't have gone. I shouldn't have been able to go that long without anybody doing a urine sample. If that's your process, you know what I mean? Like, who's checking that? And why isn't anybody questioning? Medical records are electronic. And at my practice, they were like, oh, well, we don't know who's going to deliver your baby. So we want you to go to different doctors. So you get to meet everybody. You guys all have access to my records. Who's ordering the lab? Like, who's paying attention to this stuff? And if you don't pay attention to it, what are you doing? Like, why is this not regulated? Why is there nothing in place to fix this? It doesn't make any sense to me. So my husband and I created a nonprofit called Jace's Journey in honor of our baby. And I just want to help, you know, I just want to bring awareness to the racial disparities. I want to, you know, advocate for people who can't advocate for themselves. I want to provide resources for people who can't get to their doctor's appointments. I want to do whatever. I'll actually be at Mom Congress in May, just trying to do what I can to figure out, you know, how I can help and how we can help end this, man. It's just terrible. And my heart breaks every time I hear about, you know, somebody dying or almost dying or babies dying from things that could be prevented. It doesn't even make sense that it's so bad.
Absolutely. And it should not take for someone to die for them to finally go back to look at the records,
Right.
understand exactly what happened, or, you know, to have a maternal near miss like both of us have experienced where we almost died for it to happen. And I think that going to Mom Congress is definitely a great place to start. And then for everyone listening, definitely, we got to go to the polls in November of next year. That's the only way that some of this stuff could change. Absolutely. So, but another question I have for you is, did you all think about pursuing any legal action about this, or is there anything there? Okay.
We are in the process of pursuing legal action. We have retained an attorney, so he's working on. North Carolina's a little weird about medical malpractice. They have a lot of nuances to medical malpractice lawsuits, so he's working on it. But you know how those things go. They're going to find any way they can to say it wasn't their fault. But you know, all I can do is
Absolutely,
tell my story.
absolutely.
All I can do is tell them the truth. And like, they didn't even provide basic care. Not alone the care that you, A, told me I was high risk, B, put me on a low dose of aspirin because I was high risk, and then didn't do anything else. Like, you can't deny any of that. So we'll see. But praising God, everything goes our way, and we have a successful outcome.
Yes, yes. That's the reason why I asked. I want to definitely keep you all lifted in prayer as you all go through that journey. So tell us more about Jace's journey and what you all hope to do in the upcoming year.
So in October, we're actually having a 5K, and that's just to start bringing awareness to the area because there's not a lot of initiatives in our area right now. Johnson C. Smith University is actually doing a lot of work as far as like education. So they have a doula training program going on, and then they're also doing a lactation consultant program going on. I think they're one of the first to actually do it. So I've reached out to them as far as offering some scholarships for students who can't afford it and are interested in the program. Working with the 100 Black Women's Coalition that's also local to the area, hopefully with some initiatives this year too. Just trying to, like I said, do what we can. I don't know what everybody needs, but I want to try to at least bridge the gap where I can. And also telling our story. A lot of times we forget about the men. This is sisters-in-laws, but, I can't help but, think about my husband and, he's looking at me dying and trying to figure out how to bury his son at the same time. And I can only imagine because I was out for the worst parts of my surgeries and stuff like that. I was out for that. So he had to deal with everything. And I don't want us to forget about the men because they experience, even though they don't like to talk about it, they, experience the same loss. So we do want to do a little something for the men too. So they can feel loved and be reminded that we know you lost someone too. And also working with like the mental health aspect of it. I kind of want to be like a peer support, do some like peer support as far as like sisters in loss, just because like I said before, we don't really talk about it that much. And I just happen to be very lucky to have friends that don't care about sharing stuff with me and me sharing stuff with them. But there are people who don't have that outlet. And, even through our counselors who is actually Kindermore, who are local to the Charlotte area. And, they're a nonprofit and they pretty much, give you reduced rates for therapy after you've lost a child or children that have lost parents and stuff like that. They've been like integral to our healing too. So just to even be able to donate to them and helping people, I've actually hooked up with a couple who've come through here for some peer support, like with me and my husband, because they've gone through the same thing. But just trying to make it less of a taboo topic to talk about and more of everybody trying to heal, everybody being aware, and everybody trying to make this a better situation. And like I said, just having better outcomes of this because it's been going on for a very long time. They've got some bills getting passed to try to help. But what's being done in the meantime is we have to educate our people. We have to bring awareness to our people. We have to support our people. I don't want to ever tell anybody don't have a baby because you might die. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to be that person. Just like everybody, have your babies. Continue to have your babies and just be conscious of what's going on in our world. And our government is crazy because banks should not be regulated more than healthcare. I just don't understand how that works. But we also, trust God with our cash, but not our kids. So it's just a lot. It's just a lot to try to cover it, but, just do just awareness and education and peer support and making this not as taboo, and mental health around loss is important and integral to healing because we all have gone through trauma in our lives and have just pushed it aside until you get to a breaking point. And that's why people are crazy in the world right now, because people have reached their breaking point without talking to people. We have to get this stuff out. We have to encourage and support and love each other, because it's just getting bad. I talk too much. Sorry.
No. Everything you're saying is so good. And I'm just listening, nodding my head like, girl, chill, preach. No, everything you're saying is perfect. And I think that the women that are listening, they understand the trauma. They understand the heartache and the pain and the grief and the losses that come when you experience something like that. So what tools and what other resources have you used to help you on your journey? I know you mentioned Kindlemore and the therapy that you're going to. Are any other resources out there that you gravitate towards to help you?
There's nothing really specifically. Like I said, it's just my husband, we've grown so much closer since all of this has happened. And a lot of people are always like, well, it can either hurt or help. And I think just being open and honest about it. Another thing, telling my story has also helped both of us a lot. You keep it bottled up and then you don't know what to do with it later. But talking about it actually helps somebody else to heal too. So I think Kindlemore as our support system, our family as our support system, and then just sharing our story and just letting people know that, bad things do happen, but you can get through them if you use the right resources and don't bottle it in, because there's somebody else going through the same thing as you. But you also have to own your feelings. So if you can't just completely say, oh, well, everything's good. Okay, I'm fine. There are good days and there are bad days. I am a witness to those. I mean, I cried yesterday, but today I'm okay. And it's okay. And I've learned how to own my feelings. I might not feel good every day. And like I said, we're coming up on a year. So I don't know how I'm going to feel that day. I could have an okay day, or I could be in a closet on the floor. But I think you have to own your feelings no matter what those feelings are. If you feel angry, you feel angry, and you're entitled to feeling angry. If you feel sad, you're entitled to that feeling too. And it's also okay to laugh and be happy, because I know my son, if he's anything like me and my husband, he would want me to laugh. There's no way I'm going to not live my life with him watching and me being unhappy and sad all the time. Like I said, I got a lot to live up to.
Absolutely. And I love that you have a lot to live up to. And he definitely just doesn't want you to be sad or unhappy.
I know. If he's anything like me,
right.
If he's anything like me, he doesn't want me to be sad. So
absolutely. And I love that. I absolutely love that. So what do you plan to do for his first anniversary?
I don't know. We were just talking about that, and me and my husband aren't like ritual people, so we don't know. We hadn't thought about it. We just kind of discussed it, and we had one ceremony here through Kindlemore that we like lit lamps, like the little lamps that disintegrate in the air, lanterns, those things. And that was really sweet. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I guess, we'll figure it out in a couple weeks whenever it comes, but we haven't really planned anything now. Again, I might be in a closet somewhere crying, so who knows?
Yeah, and that's fine too, But I always encourage people to celebrate, no matter how small, whatever you do, just try to celebrate his life. Because, like as you mentioned, everything you said, he's looking down on you, and he wants you to be happy and celebrate him on that day, even though that day they bring sadness, and you may cry and you may get it out, and then you may be happy again and smiling. But do something special between you and your husband, and then you all figure out what you all want to do going forward on that day, because that day comes every year,
It does.
And it does not get easier, If anything, it probably gets harder as the seasons go. So definitely think about what you want to do. Some things that we did on my son's first anniversary, we went to his gravesite and we released balloons. And every year after that, we've done something different, whether it's, we go buy a cake and me and my husband share it between the two of us, or we go to the movies, which is something that we love to do. Like we celebrate it in our own way every year. Even though it's a sad day, it's still a happy day because we know that God blessed us with that angel as well as the other baby girl that I have in heaven. And just like you said, they're looking down on us and they're watching us. And, one day we'll be able to see them again and be able to hug on them and love on them in our own special way once we get to heaven. So I look forward to that day. But we still got work to do here on earth, and I think that's why
we got so much work to do.
Yeah, and that's the reason why we're connected and why we're sharing on this podcast, because we have so much more work to do, so many more stories to tell, so many more lives to save, and so that we don't have maternal near misses anymore, that babies are lost. So I definitely love what you all are doing. And we'll continue to pray for y'all as y'all go on this journey down that legal path and just the journey in general to grow your family. So last thing I would like for you to just leave us with some encouraging words. What encouraging words do you have for the listeners who may have gone through something similar, whether it's H.E.L.P syndrome or just have experienced such a traumatic birth experience where they've lost their baby?
I think my number one thing is to own your feelings. Like, no matter how long it's been, no matter where you are, own it, accept it, and then move from it. And you're not by yourself. You're not alone. There's millions of us out here. I'm in a few Facebook group people. So if even me, if you want to reach out to me, do it. I'm all about supporting people. So live in love. And like I said, own your feelings. There's no one can tell you how to feel or when you should move on or how long it takes to grieve. So own everything that comes in your heart and just hold on to it.
I love that. Own your feelings. So where can we find you, Tomeka, on social?
Social media. I am Tomeka James Isaac on Facebook. We also have Jace's Journey Inc. on Facebook. I am Miss MS James Now Isaac, ISAAC, on Instagram. I don't even know what my Twitter name is. I'm never on Twitter. So I have no idea what that is right now.
But I'll make sure I get it and we'll link it in the show notes for everybody.
Okay.
Well, I enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for being on the Sisters in Law podcast and sharing your journey and your light with us today.
Thank you so much for doing this. God bless you. Thank you so much for the platform. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I pray that this show was inspirational and a blessing to you. For show notes, visit ericamcafee.com/podcast. Please join us in our offline discussions in our private Facebook group by going to sistersinloss.com. If you're listening in Apple Podcasts, please rate and subscribe to us and leave us a 5-star review. I pray that you all have a blessed week. Keep the faith, and I'll talk to you next Wednesday.
Whether you're into unsolved mysteries, solved mysteries, or creating your own mysteries, Amazon Music's got millions of podcast episodes waiting. Just download the Amazon Music app and start listening to your favorite podcasts ad-free, included with Prime.